Welcome to Blessings and Curses, a journey through Deuteronomy 28. The Assyrian Manifestation in 722 BCE, the Babylonian rule under Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BCE, and the Roman Captivity in 70 AD, bringing to light the connections in Yah's word to these momentous events. A central focus will be the transatlantic slave trade, a subject we will dissect in great detail through the lens of Deuteronomy 28. But we won't stop at history. We probe into the present. Who inhabits modern Israel? Who are today's Jews, Israelites, or Hebrews? This enlightening journey is our effort to present ourselves approved to Yah, rightfully dividing the word of truth, 2 Timothy 2:15. Let's begin today's episode.
All right. So, again, Shabbat Shalom and welcome again to our afternoon study where we are in the book of Daniel by way of Deuteronomy chapter 28. And just by way of review, we wanted to make sure that when we looked at Deuteronomy 28, we clearly understood that prophecy more often has more than one manifestation, in this case, several manifestations, because it applied to the cause and effect of what Israel did, what Israel does. If you are obedient, blessings await you. If you are disobedient, cursings await you. So we are able to pinpoint throughout biblical history up until now all of those things that occurred based upon this particular prophecy, because it's vital for our life. You know, it's vital to our understanding because there's so much entailed, there's so much misinterpreted, and there's so much taught incorrectly. So we wanted to make sure that there are no stones left unturned, you know, as we always do as we walk through scripture, to make sure we understand what it's saying clearly, to see all of the different manifestations that we've been walking through. But before we jump back in, we will read our foundational verses as to see what we are following, and then jump back into literally Babylon, where Judah has been pulled into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar. So if I can get a hand to read, we'll read our foundational verses. All right, Brother Al. And there'll be plenty of reading, so I'll hit you later, Felicia. Brother Al, if you would read Deuteronomy chapter 28, and you'll be reading verses 36 through 48. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 36 through 48.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yahuah shall bring you and your king, which you shall set over you, unto a nation which neither you nor your fathers have known. And there you shall serve other Elohim, wood and stone. And it shall become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither Yahuah shall lead you. You shall carry much seed out into the field, and shall gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. You shall plant vineyards and dress them, but shall neither drink of wine, nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them. You shall have olive trees throughout all your coasts, but you shall not anoint yourself with the oil, for your olive shall cast its fruits. You shall beget sons and daughters, but you shall not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. All your trees and your fruit of your land shall the locust consume. The stranger that is within you shall get up above you very high, and you shall come down very low. He shall lend to you, and you shall not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you shall be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon you, and shall pursue you and overtake you till you be destroyed, because you have hearkened not unto the voice of Yahuwah Elohim, to guard his commandments and his statutes which he commanded you. And they shall be upon you for a sign and for a wonder, and upon your seed forever, because you have served not Yahuwah Elohim with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Therefore shall you serve your enemies, which Yahuwah shall send against you, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon your neck until he have destroyed you. Praise Yah.
Praise Yah. And always a vivid picture as we have drawn through the past and several weeks, um, of that coming into fruition. You know, Israel in Yah's mind and heart was supposed to be not just Yah's chosen people, but a nation of priests that would carry the message, carry the lifestyle, carry the relationship to the world, to be a light, to be a city on a hill, as is expressed in the Brit Hadashah, leaning back to what Yah originally wanted. But Israel, you know, as we found out, wanted to be like these other nations. The other nations, you know, Israel had Yah, but the other nations had kings and kingdoms, and they had all of these different things. Israel wanted to mimic that. But in mimicking that, they also forgot whose they were. They forgot who they belonged to. They forgot their ways of life. They forgot that they weren't supposed to emulate the other nations. They forgot that they weren't supposed to serve or worship or idolize any of their Elohims, false Elohims, I might add. But Israel did that too. So they violated the very law that Yahuah told them not to. And all of those things that Brother Al just read happened. We read them vividly. We watched the Assyrian Empire take hold of the northern kingdoms, Israel. We saw the southern kingdom kings do the exact same thing that the northern kingdoms did, and that's why we see that in Yahuwah's proclamation, in Yahuwah's warning, he says, "The king that you follow, I will carry away in yokes." And the kings were wicked and did the exact same thing. Yes, there were some good kings sprinkled in here and there, but their sons never followed their example, and they became a nation that blended in with all these other wicked nations around them, which was the warning that Yahuwah gave them. You know, he told them specific things. So after the Assyrians carried away the northern kingdom, Babylon comes in and carries away the southern kingdom. And last week, or not last week, but a couple of weeks ago, we looked at in full detail the ramifications of that first deportation into Babylon, which took Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into Babylon. We looked at Babylon in totality in the things that they were teaching. We lined that up with, contemporary, studies and education, calling us to be mindful of, choosing certain establishments and making sure that our children are aware of what to steer away from, if that is their desire for higher learning. We looked at specific things, specific studies that matched what these four young Yahudim were receiving in form of indoctrination to live a certain way. And then we started to look deeply into their rejection, not of what they were being taught, because they took that in, but they deciphered it and filtered it through the eyes of Yah, through the word of Yah, and said, we're not going to do certain things. We're not going to eat the king's meat. We're not going to drink the king's wine and put it to a test in front of the king. And those things came out to be that was a good opportunity for them to show who Yah was and how he strengthened them through the diet that was approved by him. Right. We then began to look at the idea of Nebuchadnezzar's torment from this dream he had and the ways that he looked at how this could be resolved in taking his princes, his magicians, his philosophers, putting them to the test and giving a harsh judgment on them, conveying to him what this meant. What does this dream mean? And we saw how Daniel comes up and he grabs his three friends and they seek Yah, and Yah reveals to them and they take it back to Nebuchadnezzar. And we dissected that dream. We dissected that dream, and specifically the last time we were together, we went through the end of the Babylonian Empire, the entrance of Persia and the Medes, and Greece and Rome, and we dissected it to the point where we were able to show exact things that happened throughout history. And we went through even the history of the United States since 1896, and we looked at different things, different edicts, different laws, different organizations that tie into this one world idea so that we can understand how powerful the mind of the enemy is to make sure that this idea is carried throughout. So we now find ourselves after that time period where the dream is revealed, and Nebuchadnezzar now, looks to these four men as being mighty men, as being men of knowledge, as being men of solidifying who they trust in, who they believe in, who they have faith in, and he places them in different places within his government to be administrators, to be advisors, to be governors even, and we're going to look at some of that stuff. And they are in this coveted spot, according to what the Babylonians are looking at. Why are these men so favored? Why do they get to do these things? And even, going into this idea of exposing some of the things that they're not doing in order to bring attention to them, to have them removed. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But we come to this crossroads, and I know that the chapter 3 obviously is right after chapter 2, but there's some time there. There's some time in between to allow certain things to establish. Certain things happen within the nation of Babylon. The ideas, all of the things within the government and the movement of the nation that caused Nebuchadnezzar to do some things. So we'll look at that today. So we'll pick up in chapter 3. We'll try to get through the whole chapter, and we can do that. But I want to make sure that we're not rushing it either as well. So let's start in chapter 3. I think we're all caught up. And so who was it that had their hand up right after Al? I'll let that person be first. It was a woman. I forgot who had their hand up to read. Felicia. All right, yeah, Felicia, sorry. So Felicia, if you could, would you read Daniel chapter 3, you can read verses 1 through 7. Daniel chapter 3, read verses 1 through 7, stop at 8.
Stop at 8. Okay. You want me to read 8 or yeah, stop, don't read 8.
Don't read
Right?
8. Yeah.
All right. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Okay.
shalom.
Daniel chapter 3. Nebuchadnezzar the sovereign made an image of gold, whose height was 60 amah and the width 6 amah. And he put it in, excuse me, and he put it in the plain of Dura in the province of Babel. And sovereign Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the viceroys, the nobles and the governors and counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of the image which sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had put up. Then the viceroys, the nobles and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province gathered together for the dedication of the image that sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had put up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had put up. Then a herald loudly proclaimed, "To you it is commanded, O people, O peoples, nations, and languages, that as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes, and all kinds of instruments, you should fall down and do obedience to the gold image that sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had put up. And whoever does not fall down and do obedience is immediately thrown into the midst of a burning furnace of fire." So as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, all kinds of instruments, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and did. Do I tell you this word? The obedience of to the gold image that sovereign Nebuchadnezzar had put up. Praise Yah.
Right. So that obvious is just worship. Yeah, anyone want to add anything, or anyone see anything there that they want to call out or express on? Brother Al.
Praise yeah. It just seems like an act of defiance, because in chapter 2, right, we saw like a dream. The head was a gold, and which was interpreted to him that is his kingdom. Then he goes and makes a statue that is all gold, right? It seems to be, I don't know, seems to me like an act of defiance and checking the loyalty of the people, asking everybody to bow down to the statue to see who is on his side, or to kind of maybe, I don't know, in his own mind, fish out whoever it is that's going to topple his reign. And I don't know, that's kind of what I see.
That's a good assessment. That's a good assessment. There's not much biblical evidence of why he did that, but there are some historical facts surrounding that time, the time period in between chapter 2 and chapter 3, that, some are documented. There's so much information, but hard to pinpoint anything specific. But I'll speak on some of those things that might have caused Nebuchadnezzar to feel like he needed to do this. But I think part of it is, his interpretation of what was told to him in the dream, and taking claim to it being him and having something that resembled his dream as a point of worship. But there were some loyalty issues that we'll talk about once we dig in. Anybody else want to add anything to the reading before we dive in? All right, Brother Rick. My man.
Hey, shalom, brother.
Shalom.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've got into this, and I'm looking at this, and I see the verbiage of what it is talking that he's controlling like everybody. It sounds like because he says he heraldly loudly proclaimed to you. There's a command, O peoples, nations, and languages. So, I mean, his reach had to been far, and what he's telling them to do here is an act of worship when he's hearing these sounds and these flutes. And I'm wondering, how that equates with, the Hebrews when they hear these sounds and as sounds of warning, like the shofars and that type of stuff. But using the same type of instruments and stuff, and tells them that they need to fall down and basically observance of this image and basically worshiping it, and those that don't, they're going to be thrown into this fire. So, it's interesting to me. That's what stood out so much was I guess the instruments and understanding the relations that we see in scripture where it talks about these instruments of worship basically. So that was kind of what stood out to me at that point.
Yeah. What's interesting is the focal point of music, which we'll talk a little bit about. But those same instruments can be used for other things. What Yah meant for a beautiful sound, a sound of warning, a sound of jubilee, a sound of celebration, can also be used with pagan direction behind it. So yeah, we'll look at that a bit. But yeah, great point to make, and a great section of the passage to put a spotlight on, both you and Brother Al. Sister Alexandria.
Shabbat Shalom, Elder Rod.
Shabbat Shalom, sister.
Shabbat Shalom. I have a question. So it's just an image. It's made of gold, and the height is 6 cubits, and the width is 6 cubits. But it doesn't say what kind of image. Or do we know what kind of image it is? Is it the image of him, or I was
Well,
just
it's a statue. Yeah, it's a statue. It's supposed to emulate, in some sense, the dream he had.
Okay. I was just trying to get clarification on the image. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. It's a effigy or a caricature or an image of what he saw. He's trying to tack on the dream and to have it as a focal point for the nations to see, for many different reasons. But we'll look at a few. Anyone else? All right, let's get in. So we kind of looked at this idea of coming off of kind of a victory for Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where they were promoted, based upon the revelation of the dream he had, the detail. We looked at Daniel when giving King Nebuchadnezzar the revelation, not only told him what the dream was and what it meant, he told him what he was thinking about before he went to bed to even lead into this dream. So he had to be astonished. There had to be some celebration in his heart and mind based upon what Daniel was able to convey to him through the wisdom of Yah, right? And as I said, some time had passed. I looked at a couple different things, but I'm not really wanting to, give anyone any particular book or anything because there's so much information just on the internet. Some is incomplete, and because we don't have the biblical, there's only speculation, but one of the things that we do know is that, time had passed, 10, possibly 15, maybe even 20 years in between the end of chapter 2 and the beginning of chapter 3. So many things have happened. Many things have gone on. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are established now, in their roles. Looking at different studies or even theological books. There was speculation that there was jealousy facing towards them. Why are these, Judeans, why are they being propped up when this is our country? Why do they get special treatment? Why do they get to eat, what they want to eat and not have to eat the king's meat? Why are they so favored? But something else was going on in Babylon at this particular time. So somewhere in the same realm as we talked about with Rome, how Rome, wasn't necessarily defeated, although Constantinople kind of moved in, but they imploded from within by their immorality, by their fighting, by their intermingling. All of these things started to deteriorate Rome from the inside. So there were rebellions, according to history, going on in Babylon. And to Brother Al's point, he wanted to establish that he was in charge. He wanted to establish and weed out anyone who wasn't loyal to him, right? Because, as rebellions go, once a rising is brought up, they can move in and take out, treason on the emperor, on the king. We see this in the period films. My wife and I were watching a period show the other day, and there was a Viking king that took over England, and parts of Constantinople had risen a Viking governor to the top of his government. And there was jealousy around that fact. There was jealousy around him being favored. There was, jealousy of how charming he was. And there was a move by some of the others in charge to take him out, to frame him, to point out some things that were inconsistent with what the emperor was doing, much as what we see here. So it says that Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, which is approximately 90 feet. So this statue was up on a pedestal, 90 feet high, 6 cubits wide, which is about 9 feet wide. So 9 feet wide, 90 feet high. And it was set up in the plain of Dora, in the province of Babylon. So the plain of Dora is about 6 miles southeast of Babylon. It's a flat plain where you could erect something that would be seen from far around. Think of the Washington Monument, how that's seen from Virginia, from Maryland, and from DC in that immediate area. So anyone living in that province would be able to see this statue. Hearing the music, they would fall down and worship. So he set this up in the plain of Dora. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image, which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So he calls all of the officials, all of his prime ministers, all of his governors, all of his officials in all of the province of the land. So the king, the emperor always sets up, there's always a large territory that they have. So they can't be every place at once. So they set up magistrates, governors, delegates to carry out the king's or the emperor's wishes in those provinces. So all of the provinces that are under Nebuchadnezzar are gathered together to come in so that they can understand what is necessary to show their dedication to him. And this list of men, this list of instruments is repetitive because we're going to read it a couple times. But this is an official decree. This is an official document. This is an official edict. Did Daniel and the three men having high-ranking positions in Babylon are going to be put to the test. Now, Daniel's not mentioned here. Not sure where he was, not sure why he wasn't there. But these men are in high-ranking positions in Babylon. So to make a claim, to make an edict, to make a directive, an order, a law to bow down would immediately expose anyone who believed in the only one and true Most High Yah, right? So he calls it satraps, which are chief officials. And these officials are mentioned in descending order. So you have all of them in order from the top to the bottom. And if you remember, later in scripture, Zerubbabel and Nehemiah were both appointed as governors in Babylon, both from Judah. So we can read that in scripture. Zerubbabel is mentioned in Haggai, and Nehemiah is obviously mentioned in the book of Nehemiah, verse 5:14. So they were appointed governors as well. So this is something the king did to set up his provinces and have someone rule over that would carry out the king's word. So the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages." So this herald, a heralder is someone, first of all, it runs fast because they, a lot of times they're running ahead of the crowd to deliver a specific message directed by the king or the emperor. And they speak with a loud voice for all to hear. Again, if watching some of these period movies and TV shows, you'll see these kinds of characters in the kingdom type films and shows. A heralder who would speak with a loud voice that would proclaim. Think of John the Baptist, would have been considered a heralder in his day. To you is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, right? The horn, the cornet, which would be similar to a trumpet, right? You have, and your particular translation might be a little bit different in what's mentioned here. Remember, this is translated from the Aramaic, the Greek, and Hebrew. This particular section is Aramaic, but there might be some Greek mixed in. Harp, flute, lyre, psaltery, all of these are like string instruments. And one is related to a bagpipe. In symphony, together, when you hear these in symphony, with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. So we have this order, we have this directive that everyone is supposed to obey, and there's a consequence to not obeying it. Brother Charles.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
So what I'm seeing out of this is that man has made a statue, and this statue is put up in front of everybody to bow down to it. Only glory of the gap is when a man tells you nothing is coming out of this statue. It's just a big goofy, just standing there, just a statue. To me, it's just something that can't hear, can't speak, can't walk, can't raise a hand, ain't gonna give you nothing if you in need. And then here comes Yah just by his words, is things being manifested, you being helped, even though Yah sends man to by his word, you seeing things happening behind his word, and all these things is being revealed and manifested. And that's what I'm seeing, is just that you can't see Yah, but you can feel, you can see everything around you. It's like everything that is in his word is manifested itself. And at least I can count on someone or something that I can see, and I can feel the glory of that unseen power, because this power is too much for us to see at this moment in time. That's kind of what I was saying. But I also want to ask you, does verse 7, does it really match with Revelation 13, 14, and 15?
Verse 7?
Yeah.
In what way specifically?
Just when it's saying that all those who don't bow down to this image
Absolutely.
will be killed and things like that. It may be a little bit different in Revelation, but I'm getting that bow down.
Same thing. Yeah, same thing. That's actually the title of the lesson today. Just, will you bow down? Or better said, what do you bow down to? Because, your first comment was, and I'm not calling you out, I appreciate your honesty. You said it's goofy to bend down, bow down to the statue that can do nothing, that can say nothing, that can hear nothing. We don't have any statues raised up right now in front of us. But what do we put in front of Yah? What do we find more important than Yah? People of Assembly of Yahuah, what do we do more than spend time with Yah? It's the same thing as bound down to this statue. So while goofy, yes, we're just as goofy. So we got to be careful that we're not falling into that same line, because we do that. We do that. Now, when we start talking about, how these men are putting on the spot in front of the king, we're going to start talking about the real reality of what was happening there. But yes, this was, I believe this was, because of all of the things that were going on, the mistrust, the backbiting, the rebellions that were going on, and the fact that there were others, that were probably feeling some kind of way about Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I can see this being, now it doesn't say this, so I'm not stating a claim, but what I'm saying is I can see this being put and whispered into the ears. We need to do something to weed the people out. And specifically, by the way it's set up, being aimed at Judah. The ones who were already planting their feet and saying, we're not eating this, we're not drinking that, we're not dressing like that, we're not doing it like that, we do this as unto Yah. And we're getting, endorsed by the king, right? So this new edict is aimed, because the pagans didn't mind. Pagans, they don't say that other gods don't exist. Matter of fact, they talk about the other gods that exist. They'll tell you, you trust in your God, we trust in ours. This faith is the only one that says there's only one true and living Elohim. So it wouldn't have mattered to these other nations as much as it mattered to Judah. And this was well known. So we got to make sure we look at that, this being aimed at them. And possibly, a reflection of the rebellion that was going on within that time frame between chapters 1 and 2, or 2 and 3. All right, so let's hit some hands, and then we'll get back on this. Vic and Cynthia.
Shalom, brother. Right?
Shabbat shalom.
Yeah, I see it as Nebuchadnezzar's attempt to avert, for example, verse 44, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. It shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. I believe that he felt that if he got all of his administrative people to spread the word that he alone is king, and I believe that the image that he built, the golden image, is an image of himself. Because why would you set up an image and have everybody bow down at your order to worship somebody else? I believe it was an image of himself, and I believe that he felt that if he built this image of himself and had everybody bow down and had the word spread throughout the land, through all the nations, that he is the one that's in control, that he is the main king here, that he would avert the kingdom of Yah coming down from heaven. Even after in verse 47, he says, the king answered, said unto Daniel, and said, of truth, it is your God, is a God of gods and Lord of kings and revealer of secrets. So he already knew that the God of heaven had power that he didn't have. He acknowledged that, but somehow he didn't get that all powerful meant that Yah's kingdom, you can't avert Yah's kingdom, but he's going to find out.
Yeah. Very, very good. Very good passage. Absolutely. Daniel told him the head is you. So he made the whole statue like the head and made it gold. Right. That's what we talked about earlier, the image being from what he saw in his dream. So rather than have the different elements involved, the whole thing was made of gold to match who he was, to make it stronger rather than weaker and brittle at the bottom. So excellent point to acknowledge who Elohim was, acknowledge who Yahuah was, but it didn't stick with him, right? Time passed, things happened, things in the ear. There's all these kingdom shows are. There's always somebody whispering in somebody's ear. Think Othello. Iago whispering in his ear to have him kill his wife. You know what I mean? Making him think things that aren't true because he was jealous. All of these things really happen. These things happen within these kingdoms. Babylon would be no different. Yeah, absolutely. Brother Dean, Sister Carmen.
Shabbat Shalom, Elder Rod.
Shabbat Shalom, brother.
Shabbat Shalom. So just a couple of things. Also, just piggybacking on what the brother was saying just now. a couple of things come to mind. And that is that this move of Nebuchadnezzar and this golden statue. On one hand, it's like an act of defiance, yep. But I actually see it as an act of fear, yep. Because even with the galvanizing of the people, to say when the trumpet goes, everybody must bow down, all these things, it's as if he's trying to because the people would have heard that he has someone in his inner circle who is not one of them, yeah. And this person, being Daniel, okay, it was his Elohim who gave the power to reveal things, like the whisperer, as you said, the whisperer, yeah. These whispers must have been there. And again, when you watch these old movies, there are people with influence and rank who are all your inner, who are not for you, yeah, who are not for you. They're for themselves. They're waiting for your demise, so they can, lead the people the way that the people deserve to be led.
Yeah.
Yep. But so I think that he may have felt that he didn't have a choice but to present this golden, this statue, this show of strength. But I think it was from a place of fear, because he's already confessed from his mouth what is true. So regardless of whether or not he has forgotten, he has spoken the truth and acknowledged the truth. But he doesn't have. We spoke about something at a different time when there was a king. I can't remember the king's name, but he was a weak king. Mm-hmm. We spoke about. You gave a study about this, and it was his council who led, or the princes who were actually leading the show, running the show. So yeah, I think it's an act of fear. I think he's literally getting all the people together to be a buffer, almost to buffer what's coming. To take some of the impact, almost like as lambs for slaughter, because he knows what's coming and he knows it's bigger than him. And then the final thing, when the scripture mentions, at this particular sound, this particular frequency, that everybody shall bow down, it actually reminds me of Hasatan. It just brings me to Hasatan. So, hallelujah.
Yeah, the accuser's mind, the accuser's way of thinking was behind all evil throughout the world. So absolutely. And I do think there is some defiance, but I think more so this was a solidifying move. I believe that there was fear involved, but I also believe that he was trying to weed out anyone that would blatantly defy him in terms of a rebellion, to make sure that his empire didn't implode from within, but there was still some, even if it was his ignorance, rebellion against Yah, for what he was doing and what he was. So yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much here. Let me hit a couple more hands. Brother Franz.
Yes, yes, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Something that jumps out in this particular scripture, actually is sort of referenced in Psalms 137:3, which says, "For they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion." And then I with that in mind, I think that there's a special gift or a gifting that's been given unto the children of Israel to be talented not only with instruments, but also with song and music and dance and praise. And in a way, this attack by Nebuchadnezzar is capturing a propensity that is present amongst the Israelites and bending it to his will. And then when we fast forward thousands of years to where we are now, I see the exact same thing playing out. You have a bunch of, I believe, Israelites who are using the artistry and the musicality to worship a golden idol known as like a Grammy. All of these golden images that are an image that is created in modern day that is you know, in the realm of music that is geared towards musicality, specifically towards Israelites, and getting them to devote their life and to devote their craft towards earning a Grammy, to feel validated and become, you know, part of this music system that this Babylonian system has created. So I see the similarities there. I just wanted to share that. Praise Yah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some parallels there in reference to what I spoke about with Brother Charles. Like, what are our images that take over the image of Yah? What's in our ear? You know, this is a good point to really discuss, you know, or you know, with your children specifically, the power of music. You know, once that beat starts thumping, starts bumping, you know, once that smooth, mellow, you know, jazz starts to roll and you start to, you know, get, your mind can go anywhere. You know, if there's subliminal verbiage, if there's lyrics involved that help take you to a certain place, to get you to think about some things that take you back, way back when you weren't living for Yah, that's a problem. You know, so we got to be very mindful of what music draws us and where it draws us to. So absolutely, brother. You know, looking at verse 7, says, so at the time when all the people heard the sound, and the horn and the harp and the flute and the lyre, a symphony with all kinds of music, all the people, nations, languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, previously in 6, those that did not commit would be cast into the fire. And we know that that was a way of execution. Jeremiah says this. Jeremiah 29, verse 22 says, and because of them, a curse shall be taken up by all captivity of Judah, who are in Babylon, saying, Yahuah made you like Zedekiah and Ahab. Zedekiah is the king you were talking about, Brother Dean. Zedekiah and Ahab, whom the king of Babylon roasted in the fire, because they have done disgraceful things in Israel, have committed adultery with their neighbors' wives, and have spoken lying words in my name, which I have not commanded them. Indeed, I know and am a witness, said Yahuah. So this was a form of disobedience. This was a form of their execution that was carried out during that time. Sister Dolores, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat Shalom.
Brother Rob, you said something that I will never, I'm gonna say never, because I will, whenever, how do I put this? Hear anything differently than you said, in God we trust. In God we trust is on our, you know, the money of the United States. When we say that loosely, but I will not look at it again the same, because in God, who's God? So anybody saying that, it may not be Yahuah, our Father. It could be, they could be referring to something else that I never, you know, won't ever hear it any differently now. To be careful about who's saying it and what the meaning is behind it.
Yeah,
So
I think the the founders of the nation were trying to emulate what they believe, but like you said, what image did they have in their mind? What, you know, was it the Pope? Was it the Ovulus? Was it, all of these different things? Was it the system, the Babylonian system? Has to come into your mind, as you said, when you read that, knowing that this world is not facing, specifically this nation is not facing Yah holistically.
yeah, I mean, so those saying "in God we trust," I mean, it's just so many perspectives, and we study this all the time. Of look at our assembly, our perspective, our belief. So again, it will never be the same to me now. I'm always going to be on my guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Yeah, everyone is not, just because they mention it, is not worshiping the same as you, believing the same as you, trusting the same way you trust in Yah's laws, statutes, and commandments. That's very clear. Very clear. Brother Franz mentioned award shows, I mean, even in sports, the first thing, you hear out of people's mouths is, praise my Lord and Savior. And it's like, okay, well, that song you just won for does not suggest that in any way you live according to what you just said. Like, come on, it is baffling, and it becomes cliche now to do it. Like, like I love track and field, but everyone is saying it, and it's just like, okay, I believe that there's some that are believers, but come on, some of y'all are really not, so at least according to what you're living by or you're living like, I would say, because it has to match. It has to match. Otherwise, you're hypocritical. You are lying lips. You are speaking outside of the costume you wear, so those things have to match. And you can't be so, one of the things, with believers is also one has to do is mention a name, and they're all in. They don't know anything about that person. They don't know anything about that fellowship. They don't know anything about that community. But just because they said Yahuah, Yahusha, you know what I mean, and they worship on the Sabbath, it's good to go. No, you better do some investigation. There are cults out here, that are ruining people's lives, so we got to make sure that we are on top of those things. Thank you, sister. That was really good. Brother Jim Bob Brunson.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. How you doing?
All right, I'm doing blessed. I am blessed on this day. Hallelujah, Yahuah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, when it's talking about the music instruments, in the scriptures we're reading, it's I believe it's in the industry itself, the entertainment industry, whether it's the music, sports, movies, theater, whatever it is. Especially the music industry and sports industry. There's so many distractions out there in the music industry, and the lyrics that they play and the subliminal messages that are in them. It's going to take your mind totally away from Yahuah and Yahusha, and it's really boils down to demon worship, Satan worship, and that's serious business. What we put our minds to, our ears to, and our eyes to. because the television is really not of Yahuah, and it can be used for him, but it's not. And a lot of things, more 90% of the things on the television and on radio and in the entertainment is not of Yahuah. And we need to be take heed to what his word says, because that image that they were bound down to really boils down to demon worship, and that's serious stuff. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm not against television completely. I think that there is some good programming. I think there are pure people in the industry. I think that there is, good programming. I think that there are believers as well. But I think as a system, it's absolutely corrupt in that way and designed to be a distraction. So you have to know how to decipher. You have to know how to throw away the bone and chew the meat, so to speak. But if you can't, I know a guy who, he was watching TV with his son, and the programming was so bad he took an axe, put it through his television, the old televisions, the big box televisions, talking about a show getting axed. But and it was his demonstration of how disgusted he was with what was on the tube. So definitely have to monitor for your eyes and heart, and most definitely, and more importantly, for your children. But yes, sir, Jim Bob. Brother Dean.
Just to add shortly.
Oh, by the way, not to interrupt, but Brother Dean is our resident. He knows the industry quite a bit, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Scarily. But sometimes I like the fact that you brought out earlier on that let's just keep the golden statue symbolic, but not let that be the sole focus, and then be distracted from our own potential idols. Yeah, I love that. And what I was going to say is that the reason being is that we have to know where we've already succumbed. Yeah. As opposed to, okay, let me look out, everything being outward. Where have I already succumbed? Okay. So I think they say natural sound is 432 megahertz. Okay. So this is analog. Yeah, this is the analog sound.
Right.
Now, they digitized everything, and they standardized music to be in 440 or 444, something like that. Yep. Now, what that means is that the original soul that was being amplified is now the algorithm, the metrics, the whole dynamics of that sound is now enslaved in this frequency. Yep. And the whole reason why this was done is basically so they could control replicate the replicating. Yeah. But also that they could at any point shift frequencies within this digital format. Yep. So you can listen to a happy song. You purchase a happy song, but they can send frequencies through digital, yep, that are sad. Yep. So you're listening to you bought a happy song and everybody else is dancing and you're wondering why you're feeling so low. Yep. So why am I saying that? Is because whether or not we're like, the short, what I'm saying is that it's already happened. It's not something that look out for something that's happening. It's already happened. And we have to understand that in the setting apart and in the restoring, we have to ask ourselves, how far are we willing to go? Yeah. But for as long as we keep using the same tools, then we ourselves put ourselves in a situation where information can be changed. So even some, they can send through digital. They can change things in our music in that digital format. So even saying Yahuah, all these Yahusha in that digital format, it can be manipulated in a way that is basically, they call the shots. Yeah. So even how we record music, we have to begin to, rethink that, and say, is this really, there are easier ways that things are done and convenient. I always say that convenience is the big con. Yeah. And that's what plagues us. Yeah. But the minute when humans stopped collaborating, souls stopped collaborating, and it all went into the little box, and it all became digitized, something was lost. And I just want to say that we have to be careful what we're listening to in the digital era. Because it's as you call it, it's a system. It's a system. So hallelujah.
Technology. Thank you, brother. I knew you would have something to add to that. I think technology is a completely different monster. But make no mistake, it started in Babylon. So they have the formula, digital or analog. They got the formula for how it's supposed to be done. And I was thinking back when my oldest son was in Little League, and there was this song that they were playing like at the field, and I was just like, why do they have these kids? This was the other team. Why do they have these kids singing that song? And they liked the beat and they liked the hook. But these are little kids, and the phrase they were singing over and over, like you said, it's repetitive. It's repeating over and over, ringing in your head. Was something graphic and sexual, and they're just saying it like it's just a phrase, and it means something else, And these are the types of things that happen all the time. You find yourself bopping to a beat, but the words that match it are horrifying, to say the least. But yeah, we can be on that all day. Let me hit these hands, and then we'll jump back in. I don't know if we're gonna finish now, but we can try. Sister Marguerite.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I just had my hand just to read.
Oh, okay.
We're ready to
so I'll call on you. Let me write down Marguerite, because I'll forget when to read. We'll read right after Sister Dolores. We're gonna go to verse 8 and read to verse 18. All right, Sister Alexandria.
Yes, Elder Rod, I wanted to go back to the description of the image again. I just find it quite interesting how in Daniel, he writes the book of Daniel. Is that correct?
Daniel writes what?
Does he write the book of Daniel? Daniel writes the book?
Yes.
So I find it interesting, like, how he describes the image, whereas from chapter 2, how when he's describing the dream, he describes the image, and he even tells, because he's describing the dream, he's even able to tell Nebuchadnezzar that the head is his head. And
Right.
then here in 3, when he's talking about the image, he's just saying he made an image of gold, like to even say that this idol is made of, it is emulating or is an exact image of the king, is like an it's sacrilegious, So I'm just, to me, this description, I know we are to understand that it is Nebuchadnezzar, because of history, but I just find that quite interesting that it doesn't say Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold of himself. So
Yeah,
that,
I mean, I think there's there's a direct correlation to the dream,
yes,
what he saw, the head being of gold, and Daniel saying that's him, and then this whole statue being of gold, which is a progression in the idea of what this image was in trying to build this devotion to his lead, right? So it's all about all of those things. The culmination of those things being this image of himself.
But I do understand what the everyone else has been speaking on. Yes, they are coming after the Hebrews because they already understand who they serve and what they will not do, and for reasons of what they have already gained and standing and power, they are coming after the Hebrews.
I mean, we're going to this next portion that Sister Margarita is going to read. We're going to see those things start coming out. We're going to hear the whispering in the ear. It doesn't say that they whispered in his ear to put this statue, but they probably already were, knowing what would happen because of what these men stood for, right? So, absolutely. Sister Dolores.
So you said something a little while ago in regards to there's a lot of good people that you encounter, meet, those kind of things. My question is, we know a lot of good people. We know that everyone's not going to inherit the kingdom. So where do you put those people in how we interact with them every day, how we encounter them, when our belief system, how does that work? Because I know it's the enemy, but often it seems to me that I'm in conflict with that all the time, and especially working in a business entrepreneurial way. How do I, and a lot of times that's dealing with commerce, it's dealing with money, so people are not going to be on the up and up the same. How do I walk that walk? How do you, where do you put those good people, quote unquote?
Well, I mean, I think, good people, I think it was Messiah that asked who was good. We have people that are, know the etiquette of business, know how to be kind, and are generally nice people. But in terms of trust, when it comes to business, I think that we have to be wise and we have to seek Yahuwah's wisdom constantly in who we deal with and how we deal with them. I'm not privy to your specific business, but I think that we rely on him and his wisdom and his discernment in regards to the people that we deal with. I mean, I deal with, all kinds of people, in my business. And, there are people that I deal with professionally, and have a good professional relationship with. But outside of that, our moral system, our belief system don't match. Business wise, I don't have, that's not my concern. But outside of that, when that is infringed upon me, is when I take a stand, is when I have to make sure that my voice is heard in those ways. But without knowing specific details, it's kind of difficult to give you any specific direction. But I think that, there are people that we deal with on a regular basis that are genuinely kind, that are genuinely, about doing good business, and that are that we are to be shrewd with in those terms. We even see that in scripture where, Yah dealt with people that were shrewd. He dealt with people in trade, and directed his people on what to do, what to say, what not to do, what not to say. So hopefully that helps, unless you want to.
It does. I mean, I work with the Department of Defense.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, Department of Navy, Department of Army, so all those, and then subcontractors who basically, support them. I've managed like 400 to 600 of them. So
yeah.
But there's, I'll end with this. Let you get on. I have something that my son gave me years ago. I was in Kuwait, and it was absolutely positively challenging time because, being a quote unquote Christian, you want to use that term, is not something that's highly thought of, right?
Yeah.
But he sent me for my birthday, and it's on my wall, and it like helped me through so much. And it goes like this: today I will let Yah be Yah because I suck at it. So what you said is basically just, reconfirm, yeah, I can't walk this walk by myself and do it. I got to just, give it to him and let him handle it for every situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he can lead and guide you to a different place.
Yeah.
In a desirable place. Sometimes people are stuck in jobs or positions that they don't, that are not good for them by necessity, because they have to make ends meet. But Yah can take you where he wants you to be. Or he may have you in that place to be that light, to be the contradiction to the norm, to show what, honest business pertaining to his Torah is, and where it wouldn't put you necessarily in conflict with your success, but it could put you in conflict with some of their partners because it's different, because it's not used to what they're seeing. But just like Daniel, even though it was contrast, it ended up being something that the king respected when it came to his diet first, right, with the 4 men. And we're seeing it. We're going to see it now in reference to what happens to them, what he was able to see because of their stance, because of their belief, because of their faith, and because Yah moved right in front of him. They didn't bend, and they were in business with him, and then got promoted after he tries to kill him. So we'll see all those things happen. So many things to relate to in our everyday lives in this particular book, but specific to this chapter. All right. Thank you, Sister. Sister Marguerite, if you would read Daniel chapter 3, verse 8 through verse 18. Stop at 19.
All right. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made. But if you worship not, you shall be cast that same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our Elohim, who we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up.
Anything you want to add in there?
Just that it's a really powerful example and instruction for us to just be steadfast in our faith, and remember that even if things don't play out like we hope they are going to, that Yah's plan for us is perfect no matter what, and just to be very pray to have strength like them, and in those times when those really difficult tests and trials come.
Yeah, absolutely. Will you bow down? It's a question, We'll talk a little bit about specifically, what this looks like. Brother Al.
Hi, Shabbat Shalom. Sorry, I was just wondering where Daniel was in because it says like it's just Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Just wondering,
Yeah.
because he will have been a prime target also, right?
Say it again. He would have what?
No, he will have been a prime target. At those who had accused the Jews, right?
Absolutely. He would have been the ringleader, or the leader of them. He was in the forefront. He could have been on a mission from Nebuchadnezzar. I have no idea. He wasn't there with them, so Scripture doesn't really tell us where he was or why he wasn't there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Brother Charles.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I just noticed that came to my mind. Like I say, I don't know scripture like that and all that, but it's crazy how it just came to my mind. We don't serve things that was made with man's hands. We serve that true Elohim by these words that we were given and all of these instructions passed down. That's what we serve. It's funny that something had to dwell within them at that time as man, as a flesh. You about this because I agree with you earlier. I just said that's why I'm in my life. I see that I went that way. So just imagine somebody had the fire and saying they gonna put me in the fire. Do you know what fire feel like? You ever touch the fire on the stove and just a pinch of it, how it feel? How much pain you think you're gonna be? But they said, hey, look, man. Yahuah say was, and even if you don't, so be it, whatever. That really what made him mad because he like, I can't put this fear. I'm trying to put this fear in them, but it ain't working. Yeah. Move around, homie. I serve a Yahuah Elohim. That's what this is. And that had to take the spirit, man. I'm sorry. I just got to take the spirit of Yah in you to be able to go through that. And I'm just trying to bring the regular application to those who may be watching and myself. But praise Yah, man.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because, people read the story and they say, oh, okay, they didn't, they just said, Yah's going to save me. Like the full picture is not drawn here. So I'm going to draw it out a little bit more, Charles, because that's the threat of the fire, the heat of the fire, the way that it kills the king's guards, the trusted choice guards, and just in general picture, like what does the picture really look like? I'll talk more about that, but you set me right in the right direction to go into that a little bit more. Brother Dean?
Shalom. Just Daniel 6:21. Is Daniel being cheeky or respectful? When he or is he just addressing that the king in the manner in which he wishes to be, acknowledged, while in the next breath, literally, slapping him with the king's reality, with the reality. So when 6:21, Daniel chapter 6, verse 21, when he says, "Then Daniel said to the sovereign, O sovereign, live forever." Yep. O king, live forever.
Yeah. So I'm gonna talk about that.
Okay, no problem.
Because
All right.
it's in this chapter too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That to me is like, is this one of those moments where, give unto Caesar what's due to Caesar? Is it one of those moments called, acknowledge them how they wish to be acknowledged, because that's on them, not you. Do you understand?
I
It's like,
think in the case of when Daniel uses it, it's different than when his subjects use it, because I'm going to show you an example in Acts that
right.
matches what we're reading here in chapter 3.
Okay.
Because there is a specific, it's flattery, because what follows is something treacherous.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned the Yago, and we see they have Yago-like minds, just saying, "Oh, King, I see that, this is up, but these dudes that you put to the top, they ain't doing it." And remember, they're the same ones that don't eat what we eat, and they worship enough. They don't worship so they're building it up, and I'm going to talk about what's behind it as well.
Right.
But good point. Alexandria, and then Vic, and then I want to try to run through this, because we still got a little ways to go to get to the whole chapter.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly answer on how Daniel responded to Nebuchadnezzar, and in on verse 3:16, how he gives him his human name. He doesn't say sovereign. He says, "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you." And this is after, sovereign Nebuchadnezzar says, "Oh, who is the Elah who does deliver you from my hands?" And he says he doesn't have a need to answer in this matter. And then he says, if our Elah, whom we serve, is able to deliver us, then he does. I just noted here, at least in my scriptures, it has a little s, not a capital sovereign there.
Yeah,
and then
I don't think they're being arrogant here. I think they're just saying, look,
it's just part of the okay.
Yeah, no need to run through all of this, and
But
we didn't bow down, so you might as well get to it, because our Yah is going to save us, and they goes into, and if he doesn't, thus and so. So it's more like they're just admitting their guilt. Yeah, we didn't. What you heard, because this is through the mouths of these other officers, we didn't do it. Like, we don't even need to answer it. We didn't do it. We didn't bow down.
We didn't do it. We don't have to answer it. We're moving on. Yeah. So I was just taking this into context, and I was thinking about what Miss Dolores had brought up and how we have in this world today. I think on what the story of Daniel, I think that it is our story on how we live in the world today and how we are to interact. And I think on how Daniel responds. I pray that I have strength to respond as strongly. I'm thinking about how we are getting ready to fast, and you had mentioned, Elder Rod, about the idols, these idols that are sneaking up on us that we don't even consider. And I started to think on and pull things out that I am going to pull out as part of my fasting. It is a lot. It really humbles me to hear him, to be able to respond, to be able to say, I'm going in. I'm going to do what my father has said. I'm going to be obedient to him, and to be so strong. And that's really what I wanted to comment on. I am humbled, because I understand that, yeah, these times are going to return and be before us. I don't know if it's in our time, but I'm just thinking on just things that I'm going to pull away just for my flesh, just to fast. And he is facing a furnace. So these are just things to think on, what he's speaking and how he's speaking to the king. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think the ultimate time is approaching, but I think that there are instances where we're approached with things that are compromising, that are compromising. When we look at, what happened with them, wondering, did they have a conversation and say, look, is it that bad? Can we just do it? And just to, because it might be better, more beneficial for us to be around, for these people, you know. So maybe let's not make this our fight. No, they said, nah, we did it. Throw us in and we'll see what happens. So those compromising times, do we compromise at those times? And I would say sometimes we do, or else we wouldn't continually need to have instructions why we shouldn't, right? Every last one of us has compromised at some point in our walk to where we have failed to get that same test over again. So, but good stuff. Little battles here and there we're going to go through. Vic and Cynthia.
Well, between Brother Charles and Sister Alexandria and what you just said, y'all kind of summed up what was in my heart. Because just reading verses 16 through 18, that's deep. Made my stomach tighten up, because it's if it was bad back in the day, it's worse now, and what's to come in current life. And are we going to be able to stand like they did back in?
What do you mean it's worse now?
The way society is, getting worse.
I don't know. It's interesting. My wife and I were watching that show the other day, and I was watching. I was like, people say we got it worse now. I don't know. Back then, because when you start looking at some of the details on how these things happen, it wasn't always just about you. It's one thing, when these things happen for the king to threaten your life, and you take that stand. But then, as you're standing there about to make your stance, you hear a scream, and the next thing you know, your wife is standing there with a knife on her neck. You gonna bow down now? They got your daughter and your son. You gonna bow down now? That's the reality of these types of oppressive things. It's not just about you. Sometimes you have to make a stand regardless of the consequences, and I think that's what they were willing to do. That's what we have to see. So absolutely, times are bad. Things are. We're in this time, but I don't know. This is Babylon. Remember, this is where all of the things that are happening now originated from. They got the blueprint. So it was vicious. believe that. It was vicious. I don't want to miss that point. Like, there's no ease on the type of persecution just because it's a different time. And it may even be worse. Their prison wasn't like our prison. You know what I mean? They dropped you in a hole that was filled with a bunch of dead bodies where you had to live in that stench until they took you out. A little bit different from 3 hots in a cot. Even though the prison system is bad, even though it's unsavory, even though it's dangerous, I don't know that it was easier for them back then. You understand? So praise Yah. All right, Sister Avia, and then I'm gonna jump in. Go ahead, sister. All right, let's jump in. So, verse 8, and I want you guys to understand this, understand the mind of these men that are coming to Nebuchadnezzar. Verse 8 says, therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Yahudim, right? So accused, we think of accused as being they made a statement, they made a claim, there was a discrepancy, there was, some disobedience. But that actual word means you'll find, if you look it up, and if you remember we're coming from the Aramaic, it will say a peace. And what it means is slander and malicious accusations which devour the accused piece by piece. So there are malicious accusations. There's vitriol behind what they're saying. There is a stirring of the heart to pull the king to drawing attention to what they're doing. So they're probably saying a whole lot more than what they're saying here in his ears to draw attention to what they're not doing, right? And then in verse 9, what Brother Dean was just talking about, they say, "O King, live forever," right? So this is flattery. This is we're so devoted to you. Let me give you some flattering words so that you hear me even more. And then what follows is cruelty, right? This is the same thing that happened in the book of Acts. Give me one reader. Raise your hand, the reader. Turn to, all right, Sister Lydia, if you would turn to Acts chapter 24 and read verses 1 through 3. Acts 24, verses 1 through 3. This is when Tertullius was accusing Paul before Felix. So you'll see how he uses the same flattery before he says something treacherous about the person he's accusing.
Okay, Acts 24, 1-3.
Yes.
And after 5 days, the high priest Hananiah came down, and with elders and a certain speaker, Tertullus, and they brought charges against Shaul before the governor. And when he was called upon, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, having obtained great peace through you, and reforms being brought to this nation by your forethought, we accept it always and in all places, most excellent Felix, with all thanks.
So he does the exact same thing. Oh, merciful one. Oh, your thoughts, they lead us, they guide us, and now I'm gonna say something treacherous about this dude, right? So both are men of Yah that are being trampled on here. So they start with the flattery and then they just start digging in, right? You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound, the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, the psaltery, in symphony, with all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the burning furnace, fiery furnace. Verse 12, there are certain Yahudim, whom you have set over the affair. See, it's not just these dudes, it's these dudes who you deem to be important enough to set over the affairs, right? This is directed at them to set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these men, right, O king, have not paid due regard to you. So this goes into the claim of rebellion, to weed out rebellion. You set these men, O king, like the men that you choice pick and put them over in Babylon. They're not bowing down. They're not worshiping your gods, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up. This is vicious, and there's jealousy behind it. Otherwise, why would they say it the way they're saying it? They're also calling the king's judgment into question because you picked them, and they up there not doing what you told them to do. You see how this works? And this is exactly the way it happens in those movies, right? Right. And remember, right, verse 13 it says, the king Nebuchadnezzar is enraged and fury. Remember, the reality of this is it's embarrassing, one, that they're coming to him saying these things, calling out the fact that he put them in these positions to rule over the province of Babylon, but behind your back, they're not doing what you told them to do, right? So this is going to be a slap in the face to Nebuchadnezzar, right? This is going to be humiliating. This is what he's feeling. This is going to be embarrassing. So there's going to be rage behind it, right? So what does he do? Instead of immediately throwing them into execution, he brings them in front of everyone, right? So that there is a direct response that is on the public record in front of everyone, right? So this is what happens in these kingdoms. The accused are brought before. So the reason they're brought before the elders and all of the people is because they want what they heard to match, to get the response of the people so that they are behind 100% the king's judgment. So if they bring them before everyone and they say the same things, the crowd goes, ooh, or, oh, it's a response. They're appalled at them being defiant in front of the king, which is going to cause even more embarrassment, right? So he calls them up. He says, so they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, verse 14, saying to them, is this true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my Elohims, my gods, or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, symphony, see how he repeats it again? This is part of the decree. This is being like this, put it on public record. This is what everybody does. This is what's in the decree. I'm repeating it again so that you are clear on the things that you are supposed to do. When I say it, it's the law with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hand? So we have here clearly, this understanding of being set before the court. What does that remind you of? Give me a reader. Give me one reader. Does Dolores or Charles want to read? Thumbs up. All right. Brother Aaron, why don't you turn to Matthew 18, I'm sorry, Matthew chapter 10, and read verse 18. Matthew chapter 10, verse 18. Brother Aaron. This is when Yahushua was warning the disciples of what was going to happen, what was going to come.
18.
Verse 18, chapter 10.
Okay. All right. And you shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, as a witness to the nations.
What's happening to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? They're being brought before it, because not only does the king have to hear it, he wants all the witnesses to hear it. So they can have a reaction, a response to lay claim to the punishment that he's about to bestow on them. So we have to make sure we always see these things. These three men of great notoriety are not submitting to the king in front of all these people. Sister Dolores.
Okay, sorry. I would have read before, but my iPad was across the room. I couldn't get back in time.
Oh,
so
no
my apologies. You were describing what, I guess his advisors, Nebuchadnezzar's advisors.
Mm-hmm.
And in modern times, they were basically his hype men, if we wanted to give them a name, right?
What did you say? They what?
They were his hype men.
Hype men,
His hype men, yeah.
Yes, man, yeah.
In some regard. But you think about King Solomon, let me take this back. If you've got that much absolute power, it really doesn't matter what anybody says around you. That shows your insecurities, because you can thwart even I said it, but maybe he didn't think that way. Maybe it's at times, maybe, he was insecure. I don't know, but I would think absolute power would mean when I can change anything I want to, or, as addendum in the moment or something. So that's interesting to me, where King Solomon, it was like his wisdom, basically it was always intact. He could come back with a quip. He could, he knew how to handle the situation, but it seemed like Nebuchadnezzar could do that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if that's what I see here. That could be the case, but I see more of, okay, y'all brought this to my attention. You had to mention that I'm the one that placed them over all these things, and even them aren't listening to me behind my back. The anger in that alone. I think what he's saying is, okay, all right, I know, yeah, what I'm hearing, I know y'all didn't do this. Well, let me give you a chance. Instead of just throwing you in the fire, which normally he would have done, he said, I'm going to throw you immediately in. He said, I'm going to give them a chance. I know these men. They are of high regard. I respect them. I trust them. I listen to them. Let me make sure that these guys aren't just saying this, right? But I'm going to have witnesses to this account as well. So I don't think it's more enough about his insecurity, because he's going to throw him into the fire anyway, right?
Okay.
I mean, he's a rash dude. He's proven that in his actions. So I think it's more, I did handpick these men. Let me give them a chance to speak for themselves. And also, I know they're not going to deny, to do this in front of everybody, right? Much to his chagrin. So, but yeah, Brother Charles.
Shalom, yeah. Hey, I'm glad you did that. See, that's what I mean by when I'm looking at scripture. Sometimes you seeing like just all the spiritual stuff. You see the physical, but the way you see stuff happening in real life, I see that all the way you say how somebody try to hype you up. See, people don't understand. See, you can be listening to somebody, man, you the man's on the block, man. You let them do that. Well, I ain't gonna say that, but you told them order, but they ain't do it. Yeah. These people, And then he thinking about it because he feels so exalted. And yeah, like you said, he put them there, so he gonna give them a chance. He gonna bring them in front of everybody and say, "Hey, look, did you say this? Well, this and that." Then when you do that, he feel like kind of like the sister saying, like a little ashamed, or I forgot the word she used. So he feel his authority.
She said insecure.
Okay, where he feel like his authority is being
questioned. Yeah.
Example right here, yeah. But you know what I see happening in
You breaking up real bad. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I can't hear you, brother. But yeah, nah, exactly. They are the whispering ears. They're gonna add fuel to the fire instead of fanning the flames. They're gonna make it more hot. They're gonna make the vitriol even more, you know, just by the way, the conniving way that they approach the whole situation. Brother Dean.
So really, really funny for me. Many years, over 20 years ago, when I was in the church, a sister came to me and she pulled me one side and she whispered in my ear and she said, well, she didn't really whisper in my ear, but she spoke like in confidence, and she says, "You're going to be seated at the king's table, but do not eat." Yep. And today, after all my years in the music business, today, the Ruach HaKodesh actually revealed to me what she was talking about. What she was actually talking about. I got that conviction and that what's the word I'm looking for? Confirmation. Yep. That it's that Yahuah had me all the time, even when I didn't hold dearly to him. Yeah. And that even when you don't fully comprehend, he's planted a seed in you that will cause there to be a discomfort in certain in your walk when you come into certain environments, because just like I always remember that I learned this, that he prepared the work before the man. Yeah. So the garden came before Adam. Yeah. And the same in reference to that prophecy. He had prepared the path that I would go on. When you speak about from the foundations of the earth, it was already, but I hadn't walked it yet. So when I'm hearing you're going to be seated at the king's table, but do not eat, this, when you speak about, I'm in this business, and I can talk about this business. I can really talk about this business. And sometimes when I hear some things being spoken about, I'm just at home, like laughing to myself, like, this, only Yahuah knows who he has brought together. And I can only pray and hope that everything that that he's called us to impart in one another, in reference to the iron sharpening iron, that we actually do it. Yeah. Because we have wisdom and experience because of his mercy, but because of the calling also and purpose that he's placed on our lives. But sometimes when we just spectate, that when the scripture speaks about the watchman, yeah, when the watchman doesn't warn that the blood is on his hands, so this is not just ancient text or just text or really a good read. This is real life. This everything in Yahuwah's word is real life, and yeah, I've been deep in this thing, and not felt comfortable, but not because I thought I was holier than thou. He's just set me apart. He set me apart before I even called on his name. And they know you. They actually know who you are. They know who you are, and they will invite you and uninvite you, and play the little dangling games, yeah, and have you waiting for you to pander to them, but they already know who you are, so you will never actually be accepted in those circles. So when you're talking about idols and the fire, some people's fire is money. Yeah, some people's fire is money. When the money starts getting funny, when you've had a certain amount, come on, yeah. So yeah,
I mean, in the so-called righteous too. Money start getting funny. You see people's responses, you see their actions, you see their character come out. So yeah, Yah said, listen, gold is purified in fire, right? So the process is you take the clamps, you put it in the gold into the fire. It heats up. It bubbles up all of the impurities. The dross comes to the top. You scrape it off, put it back in. Comes to the top, scrape it off. When that gold is purified, you can see your reflection in it. Our gold is being purified, set in the fire until Yahusha's image is in it. And when we look and see ourselves, that we look like him. So keep that in mind. We are going to be in the fire sometimes, right? So let me, Sister Avia had her hand up for a while. Charles, I'll come back to you at the end, but I want to finish the chapter because I don't want to start next week with the same thing. I want to go into his second dream. But I want to get Avia because she's been waiting a while. Go ahead, sis. Sister Avia Israel. Yisharel. All right. I got to move on. All right. Go ahead, Charles, real quick.
Shalom.
It's broke up again. Oh, there she is. Go ahead. I hear you
now. I am so sorry, family. I'm very new at this, and I'm trying to get in, with the mics and all that. But I'm here now,
Go
and
ahead.
I thank you, Brother Rod, for your patience.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Yes, I just wanted to go to the previous scriptures before about the three men, that were going to be thrown in the furnace fires. I was just, if they didn't bow down to the king's gods, I was just looking at the immunity of what they have, that faith of how they said, it was said that if, do as you will, but we will not bow down to your gods. And if our God, whatever our God does, if he spares us, he spares us. If he doesn't, he doesn't. So they were actually willing to just go in as martyrs, if they if it would have been Yah's will, because they or just let them just come out. But they just knew that whichever way it went, they were going to be in Yah's will, and his. It was going to be in Yah's favor. Whatever it was, they were just willing just to go, be martyrs or just come out the fire. But it was Yah's will, whatever it would have been. Okay, I hope I explained that well.
Yeah, nah, that very good, very good. That was definitely on my list to discuss in regard to who they were, because verse 17 says, if that is the case, our Elohim, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your Elohims, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. So clearly, they knew Yah was able. They understood Yah's sovereignty. They understood Yah's power. It came with the wine. It came with the food. It came with the dream. They knew Yah was able. He had a track record, right? So they knew who Yah was. But if not, faith in Yah may not translate to victory all the time. That's what we see here. Like they knew that. Okay, yeah, he can deliver us out. But if not, circumstances change. Yah's not going to deliver us in every circumstance, right? Faith and obedience. The outcome is irrelevant. These men had the faith and obedience to serve Yah regardless of the cost, right? Two passages of scripture that are very important for us. Write these down. Hebrews 11, verses 32 through 40, and the cost. 1 Peter 4, chapter 4, verses 12 through 19, right? When you see your reflection in the gold, it's purified. We see his reflection. That's how we know. And these trials, we're not always going to be pulled out of them. We're not always going to be delivered from them. We're going to have to go through them in order to get us to where he wants us to be, right? Verse 19, then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury. and the expression on his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Direct defiance in his face and in the face of the nation, basically, right? He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. So mighty men, these were his personal bodyguards. These were, men of renown. These were capable men. And because of his anger, look what happens to these men that he held in high regard. Verse 20. Verse 21. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and other garments, and were cast into the midst of the fiery furnace. So we see haste here, because normally they would strip you and then throw you in. They throw them in with all of their clothes, bind them. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men, because of his rage, were taken out. Talking about cooler heads prevail. Some thought. Some wisdom, some counsel prior to is always better than moving hastily. Our minds will tell us anything we want to hear. We'll seek counsel from those that think like us just to do what we want to do, right? Only to regret it at the end. Like, there's no reason to be hasty, to move too quickly about any decision. When it comes to Yah and his ways, we got to be very patient with hearing his voice and not moving until we do. But everybody wants to be in a microwave. Everybody wants to move quickly, and it ends up causing consequences that are detrimental, right? So he moved with haste, he was angry. Verse 22 says, therefore, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Right? And the bind, what happened to the bonds? Then the king, Nebuchadnezzar, was astonished, and he rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, did we not cast three men bound into the fire? And they answered and said to the king, true, O king. Look, he answered, verse 25, I see four men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the son of Elohim. So we see this image that Nebuchadnezzar looks in and he sees not just Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but we see Messiah walking around. And for brevity of time, read Isaiah 43, verses 1 through 3, and Proverbs 21:18 in regards to what they see walking around in the fire. So the fire has no power, right? Then Nebuchadnezzar went near, verse 26, to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High Elohim, come out and come here. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the midst of the fire, and the satraps, the administrators, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw these men on whose bodies had no fire, or whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, nor their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them. So why did this happen? Three reasons why this happened. One, they trusted Yah, right? We talked about that. They had faith in him no matter what. They changed the king's word. They changed his edict, because we're going to find out what he says. And three, they yielded their bodies. Romans 12:2. Listen to this. So after this, verse 28, Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, blessed be the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and they have frustrated the king's word, changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies. They should not serve nor worship any god except their own Elohim. Therefore, I make a decree that any people's nation or language which speaks against the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other Elohim who can deliver like this. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So their faithfulness, because they trusted him, it changed the king's word. It changed his edict, and which tells us that in the midst of what we live through, there does come a time for civil disobedience where, the law of the land does not apply to you based upon the law that we have. So many things that we can talk about in that regard. And then they yielded their bodies. Romans 12:1 and 2. Read that. A living sacrifice. They were a living sacrifice before the Babylonian kingdom. So wanted to finish that so we can kind of move to the next idea in understanding how we're going forward and seeing the fruition and the manifestation of the prophecies in Deuteronomy 28. This is leading us to those things. So praise Yah for his word and for the study and for all of your input today. Brother Charles, I'll come to you and then we'll close out.
Shalom. Am I breaking up now?
No, you sound good now.
Yeah, I had a real important point I seen out of this. But yeah, I can see those things happening with them in a lighter manner, like how you can be somebody that's not necessarily a leader over somebody. People can come whisper in your ear,
yeah.
Like hyping you up, saying, "Yeah, you're a good guy. You believe in the word, whatever," and then start speaking things about people they don't like, trying to get you to go against them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's the and also I see that it's funny how I'm seeing all through scripture, though I know they say we are like gold put in the fire, we are also lively stones. Just think about these three bricks, Meshach, Abednego, 3 bricks took down a whole golden statue that this man made, and y'all use the littlest people, or he can use one person to bring down a whole nation, or he can use just the least amount to bring down what's more, and it always trips me out about this when I'm seeing, but yeah, it was something else she said about the but oh yeah, one more thing. It's just funny that it was the total opposite with the king after him. He really didn't want Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den, and he was praying that his Elohim would get him out of this. This is crazy. It's the total difference. But I also see with Nebuchadnezzar, do you see a connection with Pharaoh? How Yah showed him, hey, look, this is this. Oh, you don't want to hear this. All right, I'm gonna forgive you. Finna send plagues here. He send the plagues, he see it happening. He still don't turn. He constantly back, and then sooner or later, he just let him go. But even though he let him go, he still went after them and tried to take him out. But it seemed like, I don't know if that's what is going with Nebuchadnezzar. It seems like he was told the dream. You see that's just the real Elohim. Then you feel like your authority is being attacked. So now you want to take them out. Now you see it as again. I don't know what's going to happen next, if he's going to go back against that again. But if he do, that's crazy. But not to exalt myself, saying like it don't happen with me, but I see these things in everyday life. But praise y'all though, bro.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You made a lot of great points. Absolutely reminiscent of Pharaoh. Darius was a Persian king. He was a little bit different. He ended up changing and turning to Yah at the end. We're gonna go through that a bit in chapter 6, I believe. Now it's interesting how the chronology of Daniel is, and we'll talk more about that next time, because after chapter 4, the order actually jumps to chapter 7 and 8. 5 and 6 actually come after in order to 7 and 8. So we'll talk about that more next time. But yeah, you made a lot of great points, brother. There's definitely a short attention span when it comes to Nebuchadnezzar, in understanding that Yah used him specifically to correct Judah, to correct Israel, to put them on the right track back to him. But he kind of started feeling himself a bit and thinking that he was the man, and Yah used 4 men to change his mind, to change his heart. So good stuff. Sister Lydia, and then we'll close.
Yeah, shalom. I was going to point out in verse 25 can we surmise that the fourth form or person in the furnace was the Messiah?
Absolutely. That's why I gave you those passages to read in regard to Yah being with you and the angel of Yah, always being a entrance of Yahusha in the Tanakh. So definitely the son of Yahuah, our Messiah. So praise Yah, and we got to do a study on Messiah showing up in the Old Testament as well, and the angel of Yah mentioned, because usually when it says the angel of Yah is talking about Messiah, when it's not, it usually mentions the angel's name. So we'll talk about that more another time. But we'll jump into chapter 4 next time we're together, and I pray that you all being blessed, and learning from this process that we're going through of breaking down Deuteronomy 28 and all of its manifestations. So Shabbat Shalom, and you guys have a great week.
Toda Robah, praise Abba Yah, from whom all baraka flow. We hope this video encouraged you today. Don't forget to study to show yourself approved and be like the Bereans who tested everything, according to 2 Timothy 3:15 and Acts 17:11. We assemble every Shabbat and during the week with like-minded believers all over the world, virtually, and sometimes we gather in person for feast days. We have something for the whole family, including children. Discover more on our website at assemblyofyahuah.com, where you can apply to join, give the biblical assembly needs, and find many biblical resources to help you grow in your walk with Yah. To know when we publish new videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Jeremiah 33:3 tells us, "Call to Yahuah, and he will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." Much shalom.